That's hockey. Welcome to the final video of the expansion draft series, I guess, for the Seattle Kraken. Go and check if you're just checking this one out and you want to see how I got the list of players that I can select for the Seattle Kraken. Go and check out part 1 and part 2, where we can take a peek at how I came to the conclusion which teams made their expansion lists protected, or something along the lines. Make words, obviously. So the process that I'm going to do here is the first thing I want to look at is goaltending, see what kind of goaltenders are out there, and decide like if there's the best goalie that I can pick for this team. Now, I have to select 14 forwards, 9 defensemen, 3 goalies, and I have to have 20 players that have a contract for the next season. And I got to stay underneath the cap. Now, these cap hits aren't going to be reflected on what next season is. So it's going to be interesting to see how that number goes up. Now, I've run this draft a couple times, and so I got a few things in my mind, but knowing what I'm looking at right now. So here we go. So Aidan Hill is one that I would consider, especially because the Coyotes list does not have anything that enticing. So I'm pretty sure Aidan Hill is going to be one of my goalie picks. He's probably going to come in either as my backup, depending on who I go after, or as my third string. He's been behind Ranta and Kemper for a while, so I can see him being a good pickup. Halak would be one. I don't see nothing there. Like Tyler Parsons, he's a young goalie prospect, but I think that he's kind of floundered a bit the last couple of seasons. Yeah, not very good numbers playing in the ECHL, so he's not going to be one worth spending a selection on. Let's see here. Malcolm Subban's already been part of an expansion team before. Pavel Francouz, injury prone. It'd be interesting to take a look at Matis Kivlenieks. I don't know. I can't speak Latvian. So Mikko Koskinen's another one, but considering like what's available from the Edmonton Oilers and how I already kind of mentioned that Tyson Barrie would be a really good pickup for Seattle because he'll get the payment that he's been looking for. That's one thing. And Chris Driedger, he's a very interesting one. With the contract negotiation coming up, I was looking at players like this, and I said, he could possibly be my guy. I know that I most of the time end up leaning towards Marcus Niedervara, so that's kind of where I'm going to stay with that. Jonathan Quick, I think past his prime. Right here, Kaapo Kähkönen would be a solid addition. However, knowing that, what I've got planned for the Minnesota Wild, I'll explain. Now, Jake Allen, I think he's a great guy to pick up. His contract goes down, and he can still be he's proven he can play in the league. He was a starter for many years, and now he's kind of playing the backup role. So I see him being a good tandem. Is it with Jake? Is it with Aidan Hill? Maybe. Is it with somebody else? Let's take a look. Conor Ingram's another one I think would be a really interesting pickup. Known apparently had some issues. I'm really not sure about that. He has not been that good this year, but last season, yeah, .933 save percentage. So he's worth taking a look at, but at 24 years old, I don't think it really matters. And considering like the forwards that are available from the Nashville Predators, I think that I could not waste a pick there. Let's see, Keith Kincaid. And like Matt Murray is one I thought about. If you have a Matt Murray, Jake Allen group, because there's nothing too enticing there. So Matt Murray might just be a guy that you hope can find his game. Casey DeSmith. Obviously, I don't want Martin Jones. I've mentioned that. Pretty up and at it. And, yeah, Vitek Vanacek would be one that I consider. But actually, I'm probably going to take a chance on Matt Murray. And it kind of gives... It's lucky for them. But then I have my 3 goaltenders. And Matt Murray, well, him and Jake Allen are going to be right there. So now knowing that, I can go and be more free on this draft and see how it goes coming down. Now the Anaheim Ducks, I always like the idea of picking Adam Henrique. He's still got some skill, and I can see him being a guy that really thrives in a new situation. He's got a chip on his shoulder, so that would be my selection from the Anaheim Ducks. The Arizona Coyotes, I already got Aidan Hill. Boston Bruins, looking at this, I said, this is where you can cash in on some scoring. Now, there is some decent young defensemen, Jeremy Lazone, Jakob Zaboral, but I think if you get a guy like Craig Smith on a cost-effective deal, he's totally worth it, and he could plug in right on your second line. Right now, I have him on my first. Moving on to the Buffalo Sabres. Rasmus Asplund, I think, would be the pick here. Young player, probably ends up splitting between the NHL and AHL, but never a bad thing to have those guys in your pipeline when you're a new franchise starting out. Calgary Flames. Now, I thought about Mark Giordano being a leader on the blue line, but I just know there's a lot better defensemen that I can select there. So looking at this, I think Oliver Shillington would be worth picking, would be worth the flyer. And maybe he ends up being like the 7th defenseman there, and he can maybe discover his game. So that's where I'd put him. Carolina Hurricanes. Now, I mentioned Dougie Hamilton. I'm pretty sure he's going to sign there. Brady Shea, he's kind of been on a downward slide, but out of all the players that are available here, I think he's my best bet, and he could be my second pairing left side guy, Brady Shea. Okay, Chicago Blackhawks. Now, this is where I was thinking about Calvin DeHaan, but I was looking over here, and there's probably I like the idea of taking some flyers on some guys, and Henrik Borgstrom, I just want to check his stat line, because he was, I think he was like 18th. Oh, oops, that's not the right guy. You guys know this is all off the cuff, hey? Henrik Borgstrom, 23rd overall pick. He had an 18-point season in the NHL, went back to Finland, and knowing what Jesse Puljujärvi's done for the Edmonton Oilers after going back to Finland, it's possible for Borgstrom, so I'd be willing to throw him on this team. And considering there's not a lot else coming out of the Chicago Blackhawks list that I could pick from. Now, the Avalanche, I already said Devon Toews. He's my pick, and I don't know if there was anything that Colorado could do to make me change my mind on that. Aside from maybe getting like Bowen Byram in there, but I don't see that ever happening. So I think that they're just going to have to wash their hands with the fact that Devon Toews is my first pairing defenseman. The Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, I kind of went back and forth on this one a few times. I was thinking about Boone Jenner. Is he going to be the guy that gets picked, or do you go with someone younger like Eric Robinson? But I think Boone Jenner, the fact that he's available, he can play the wing, he can play center. He's like a perfect third-line center, maybe a third-line winger, and that's kind of where I'm slotting him in. He's just that he's an everyman. He's a hardworking guy, and I think that's someone you need in your roster. The Dallas Stars. Now, this one is where it kind of gets a little bit interesting. Obviously, Anton Khudobin would have been a nice pickup, but at 35 years old, you'd like to try and find something other than that. That's why I went with Jake Allen and Matt Murray. And there's really not too much there, but if you take Joe Pavelski, he comes in, he plays one great season there. I think it's possible, and I'm going to make him my pick because there's nothing else that really is exciting, and now knowing that Joe Pavelski goes there, Craig Smith can now be on my second line, and then I have Joe Pavelski on my top line. The Detroit Red Wings, once again, this is one where there's nothing too great here, but I think it's worth taking a flyer on a guy like Evgeny Svechnikov, who can maybe come in and play up to his potential there. Like, kind of think about how some guys in Vegas, like Alex Tuck, didn't really, were kind of spinning their wheels and then went over to Vegas and ended up being a perfect situation for the player. Edmonton Oilers, now this is where things are going to get controversial, obviously. If Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, if they can talk in Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, I can see it totally being possible for him to come in and be the number one center or even play on the wing. But I think a guy like Tyson Barrie, where is he going to get his money? I think Seattle gives him the best chance. Oscar Klefbom's injuries are a reason you wouldn't go into that. So I'm going to go with Tyson Barrie from the Edmonton Oilers, and he can pair up with Devon Toews, and that's a pretty strong first pairing. Moving on to the Florida Panthers. Now, I really like Chris Driedger. Obviously, I already have it, and I already said that I was going to take Marcus Nudavara. I'm a big fan of the player. I watched a lot of Columbus Blue Jackets game when he came in. Just a steady Eddie, and I think that he'd be a really good pickup for this team. The Los Angeles Kings, moving on here. This is kind of interesting. Like, there's a couple players that really are that I could go into. Ollie Mattis really struggled, so I don't think there's a reason to pick him on. And I'm already like in the $50 million cap space, in a cap hit, even though it's not quite at that rate. Moving on, I think it'd be nice to take a flyer on a guy like Elias Anderson or Carl Grundstrom. I think it comes down to those guys. And I think I would take Grundstrom. And he would go probably right around here. Like I said, this is all flying by the seat of my pants. Now, the Minnesota Wild, this is where I can see something happening where a pick is exchanged, so I don't take Kaapo Kähkönen, and it would probably be a contract I have to take, and I can see them trying to get Victor Rask out of there. Now, Victor Rask, he's really been bad since he was traded for Nito Niederreiter, and like this would be expansion considerations, or sorry. Expansion considerations. So we don't take Kaapo Kähkönen, and then along with Victor Rask, we end up with, it would be 2-pick Victor Rask, and then let's say they throw in a prospect, so prospect and first round pick. That's kind of what I'm seeing. A lot of trades like that did happen, and I really think that's what it's going to be. So Victor Rask would end up being the pick, and he comes in and maybe he can be your third line, fourth line center. I'm going to put him on the fourth line for now because I think that's where he's played a lot. Okay. And now the Montreal Canadiens. I already picked Jake Allen. And this is where I have to make a decision. I think you would take Ryan Johansson just because he automatically becomes your top line center. So that brings Adam Henrique as your second line center, and Ryan Johansson, which is not which isn't that bad at all. Probably actually better than Vegas's center depth right now, with William Karlsson kind of being the guy and Chandler Stevenson being the other guy. Obviously they're successful, but it's just not eye-popping names. The New Jersey Devils, I mentioned PK Subban. He would be a guy that could sell tickets, but I think you're already starting to see some of those guys. You have Tyson Barrie and Devon Taves, now Ryan Johansson and Joe Pavelski. So probably look at something else. Maybe take a flyer on a young defenseman or a young forward because there's really not that much there. So maybe you take Yanni Kuokkanen, but I'm going to take Nick Merkley and throw him on the right wing as one of my plug-and-play players. Moving on to the New York Islanders. Now, Scott Mayfield would be a guy I'd be really interested in, but Kiefer Bellows is another one that I thought of. Let's go with Scott Mayfield, and we'll put him right now. He's kind of plugging in on the second pairing. We'll see if that continues. The New York Rangers. This is where I'm not 100% sure where I'd go with this. Not a lot of options here as well. But maybe you take a guy like Brett Howden and hope that he figures out his game. And the more I'm looking at the way things are turning out, maybe Boone Jenner goes there. And, yeah, sometimes I wish you could just pass. There's going to be some players that just get picked for the heck of it. But, I don't know. What's Tim Gedinger? Let's see what he's all about. Obviously, Seattle will have done their scouting report on this. He's scoring pretty well in the minors. Had a couple cups of coffee. Yeah, let's take this guy. Tim Gedinger, welcome to Seattle. He could be like the Thomas Nasek, the guy you don't really know much about when he gets picked, and he's on the team from the beginning. Ottawa Senators already took Matt Murray. All right, so we're really going to need some scoring, and now this is where I have to look at a guy like James Van Riemsdyk and say, yeah, the juice is going to be worth the squeeze on that player. So James Van Riemsdyk, obviously a big salary, but totally worth it. The Pittsburgh Penguins, I really like Teddy Bluger. But maybe I should take Brandon Tanev then, but Teddy Bluger has actually been very underrated. And if I take him, he can actually go put Boone Jenner over here, and then that moves Teddy Bluger to my third line center role. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. San Jose Sharks. Radim Simic might be the best pick there, unless you want to grab Dylan Gambrell. I got a lot of players like that. Maybe Marcus Sorensen would be a pick, but I'm going to go with Simic because you can always flip defensemen again, as we've seen what Vegas did. And there we go. So that's the line on my top 6. St. Louis Blues. Now, like I said, there's a lot of really good players here. I'm a huge Sammy Blais fan, and I think he would just explode if he had a chance to be on this team. And right now, sitting there at the third line right wing, not a bad little spot. Nice. So I've met my requirements for forwards. I need 4 contracts that are 21, 22 contracts, and I need 2 defensemen. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. And I also did mention that Tyler Johnson is going to end up with as the pick, and that's going to be a consideration where we will take Tyler Johnson, and I would say that's so we don't take Foote or some of the other guys, and I can see it being like Taylor Radish, Boris Katchouk, or yeah, let's just go like that. And Boris Katchouk, 2 young players that have a future and maybe a second-round pick. So that's what we can have there. So with that being known, we pick Tyler Johnson, and this is where I got to start kind of figuring out how this line is going to work out. So maybe Craig Smith goes to the left side. That puts Tyler Johnson right there. And then you also have Taylor Radish and Boris Katchouk. And just for reference on those 2 players, I'll show you guys their stats because I've been following their careers, and if the team wasn't so deep, you'd think that they'd be getting a chance. Yeah, so second round pick. Really good season here in the AHL for Taylor Radish, and if we just click on Syracuse, Boris Katchouk was the leader for that team. Same thing. He's just slow and steady, and those are the kind of guys I can see them really wanting to hone in on. So I end up getting 3 guys for the price of 1, and I think that Tyler Johnson would be a great player as well. He can still play. He can still skate too, right? And then right here, yeah, Justin Hall, looking at this team, knowing I think that he's a perfect pickup. He could be a guy that gets moved, and he has a contract, so that meets that requirement as well. You do see here I am ahead of my cap hit, but we'll take a look at what it's going to be next year, and you'll see exactly what it is. Vancouver Canucks, same idea. I'd like to look at a defenseman, but looking at where everything is here, I'm probably needing someone on the right side. Now, Jake Virtanen would be a nice pick. Obviously, he's going through some stuff, and until that comes to light, I'm not 100% sure. But Tyler Mott, I think, can be another guy that really makes an impact on this team. So Tyler Mott, I'll put there, and now we know that that's my team going forward. And moving on, we have 2 picks left. The Washington Capitals. And this is where I was looking at a couple different options. Now, Lars Eller would be a nice little addition, and he has the contract. But also, I think Brendan Dillon, good defenseman, tough as nails. He's got a contract. Going forward, I can see him being a player that gets some discussion about him. Maybe flipping him in a trade to another team. And we'll put him there. Tough as nails hockey player. And now the Winnipeg Jets. And for my final pick, looking at the roster, I'd probably like to add another defenseman. There's not like anything that's really great there. Tucker Poolman or Logan Stanley, young guy. And Mason Appleton might be just too hard to pass up on. And I would have no qualms, I guess, about putting him on this team as well. Looking at how the roster is looking, I just realized that they changed Gedinger to Getting. So maybe Nick Merkley goes here, and then that puts Tyler Mott right here, and finalizes Mason Appleton right there. So that's what this team is going to be. So then we'll put, I guess, maybe looking at that roster, does Nudavara come out of the lineup maybe? In for Justin Hall. I'd say so. So there we go. This is my Seattle Kraken, and every requirement is met. You'll see that the cap hit is higher, but if we go here and view the team, you'll see I actually have 2.7 million in cap space. Now, there's going to be some movements after that. I can definitely see maybe they buy out a couple players, but a guy like Brendan Dillon would be traded. I think Tyson Barrie is going to get like $6 million. So that's where the money's got to move, and that's just kind of the thought process going in. But anyways, and as far as my RFAs, not a lot of guys that are going to be going through anything. No big contracts here other than probably Teddy Bluger getting like a 1.5 maybe, and that's where we're going to be. So hope you guys like this video, and just feel free to go down and comment what you think. Did I make bad decisions? Did I come up with a good team? Are these fancy trades here that I think might happen? Do you think that I'm out to lunch, or am I onto something there? So thank you guys so much for listening or for watching and checking everything out. I'm Trim Potrats. Go follow me on Twitter at PotRatsHockey, and have a nice day.